Alright everyone, now we come to, of course, the only outstanding Senate race, other than I guess Alaska, but that's GOP versus GOP, likely to break for the neocons with Murkowski. Their ranked choice system is such a goddamn mess, I have no clue what's even happening there. Also have no clue between Palin and Peltola. I don't know what the fuck is going on. Alaska's lost its mind even more than Maricopa County has, so I think we can write off that state as being neocon controlled for the near future. All hands on deck though. We've got the Georgia runoff with Herschelwalker v. Raphael Warnock. And of course, at the last stage of counting, Warnock actually had a slight advantage over Walker. The day before, Herschelwalker had a very slight advantage in the number of total votes tallied, and so I incorrectly stated then that Walker goes in with a slight ingrained advantage. It's actually Warnock by less than a point. But nobody clinched 50%. And of course, third-party voters, they could break to one or the other candidate in the runoff election. If you are in Georgia, and there are some clankers down there in the fucking peach fuzz state, please do vote for Herschelwalker, but since there are a few weeks to go until that runoff, you can do more than that. Knock on doors, put up stickers, fucking canvass, fucking volunteer, pull out all stops, because you're not going to get any support from the GOP party leadership on this race. Hell, Mitch McConnell could have easily freed up $1 million of those bucks he wasted on Murkowski v. Shabaka in Alaska, and Herschelwalker probably would have been just over 50%. To be clear, you could have done the same thing in Nevada, Arizona, and other states, and probably have 53 Senate seats right now, but keep in mind that it's all Orange Man's fault. This is the line of the night from the legacy media. Donald Trump, by the way, giving more support to Herschelwalker in his presidential announcement. A very good idea, because one of the big complaints about Trump announcing prior to the runoff there was that it will harm Herschelwalker. Well, he's in and he's giving his support to the candidate, so I don't know what harm that's doing unless you have Orange Man bad TDS syndrome. All hands on deck though. This will require more than you getting out to vote. I mean, some of you probably already voted for Walker in Georgia. Fucking do it again. This time around, though, because of its particular importance in what could be a 50-50 Senate split, so the GOP manages to break even. Of course, if Herschelwalker were a neocon, I wouldn't even be fucking making this video in retaliation for what Mitch McConnell pulled. That is important. It's more important than simply voting. People need to get more civically minded. The youth typically are the ones that go out and knock on doors, and Gen Z, of course, right now, because they're the youthful voting bloc, they tend to break far left. Millennials, by the way, did the same thing. They only broke very narrowly for the Democrats in most states. This is actually worrisome for the Dems, but they keep up the bravado of thinking that the under 25 voting demographic is somehow going to save them. I am not so sure about going forward into 2024 how well a strategy that's going to be. Herschelwalker, in my opinion, is a flawed candidate. He has some issues with his speech patterns. He doesn't really have political experience. But if you have someone with no political experience versus someone who does, but they're an abysmal failure, like Raphael Warnock, I think I would prefer the former. And when you're comparing Herschelwalker and his occasional gaffes and, not necessarily being the most verbose candidate that's ever been fielded, but you compare him to fucking John Fetterman, who won in Pennsylvania, and by the way, didn't even need honkening to win. He won before the mail-in ballots were even considered, everyone, so just let Pennsylvania go. That's not a hill to die on, just to be clear. That wasn't the honk. That was the result of the GOP leadership shafting Mehmet Oz and not giving him enough funds. Or Biden, certainly. Hell, even if you compare him to Trump at some moments. Donald Trump says off-the-wall zany things sometimes, and sometimes they're genuinely gaffes. He says things that are clearly incorrect, and he doesn't even mean to. Herschelwalker is reasonably well-spoken, and he doesn't need political experience, dude. Every single year, people without any political experience at all, other than maybe having been a staffer, are elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, and nobody seems to find it a problem. Why should Herschelwalker not be able to knock off a sitting senator? By the way, that's a gain for the GOP, a fairly major one, in a state that had been going more and more blue very slowly cycle over cycle, and now is basically 50-50. They've moved in the other direction. This is the same tale as Florida, Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona to an extent, actually. There are parts of the country that are moving more red, and they have been for some time. Pennsylvania's decided to go in the other direction, but you look at the gubernatorial seat in Oregon, That was in fucking play. So yeah, don't get demoralized and blackpilled going into the next 2 years, which is now how long the mainline elections last. Part of me thinks that's a bad thing, but at least it gives people entertainment. I would vote for Herschelwalker if I were a Georgian. It wouldn't necessarily be a ringing endorsement of all of his views or even necessarily his character, but comparing him to Warnock, yeah, I would have a fairly clear preference. Again, I would not be making this video at all unless he were a MAGA candidate. Herschelwalker is aligned with that part of the party, and that's the other appeal that I would make. Let's say that right now you're just fucking done with the Republican Party. You're talking about one of the last holdout MAGA candidates that did get shafted by Mitch McConnell, Mitch the bitch turtle, and others in the GOP who still has a chance to win because there's a runoff there. The only other pickups you can get are a dozen House seats. The Republicans will take it, and several of them are probably going to be MAGA, but it'll be very narrow. If you can keep a 50-50 in the Senate, and you've got a couple new MAGA senators, you have a chance, although it's a remote one, but it's there, to knock out Mitch McConnell and oust him as the leader of the Senate minority. What a glorious day that would be, especially leading up to an election in which the Senate minority leader will be overseeing the transference of funds in an election likely to involve Donald Trump, who the uniparty goddamn hates. If only to knock out Mitch McConnell, I would appeal to you to vote for Herschelwalker if you are in Georgia. Regardless, I would encourage all of you to support him in any way you can. I made my very first campaign donation to Herschelwalker's election campaign. Just to be clear about how important I find that, because if I find out that he wins by 2 votes, and that my donation may have caused that, I'll just give myself credit for those votes, but I'm vote buying like Joe Biden with his student loan debt grift, which we talked about separately the other day. Oh boy, what a doozy that is. It's almost as hilarious as the FTX money laundering scandal. If I find that out, and then I find out that Mitch McConnell happens to narrowly get ousted by the Senate Republicans because they blame him properly for their midterm losses for shuffling money around races that weren't even competitive, oh, I would die laughing. Yeah, my enemies would actually have as good a day as me. I would die laughing, and they'd be happy because I would keel. That's about all. Peace out.